Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Xtra Bytes. And today we have one very inspiring, wonderful landscape photographer, Erin Babnik. Thank you, Erin, for accepting our invite and join us here on this platform for the sake of all the landscape photographers from India, and probably everybody is watching from outside as well. Before we get into the session, let me give you a brief introduction. I've been really awestruck with her persona when the moment I started reading about her, and let me give you some brief insight into her profile. So Erin is known internationally as a leading photographic artist, educator, writer, and speaker, and I think all bundled into one as well. And that is probably the reason we see her a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts, a lot of things happening around. She's the favorite landscape photographer with everybody in terms of talks and in terms of stage talks, and a lot of things are happening. And I think her style is totally different. I will have certain questions on that as well. And to talk about it, Erin spent last 6 years of her academic career moonlighting as an assignment photographer and slowly transitioning to her current focus on wilderness photography, ultimately developing that passion into a full-time profession. So Erin now travels worldwide to teach photography workshops and to give talks about her work and about the genre of landscape photography. And she is the Canon Explorer of Light and also a member of illustrious nature photography team Photo Cascadia. And incidentally, she is the lone female representative in that team. And that is so inspiring. So thank you, Erin, for accepting our invite to join. You are joined by panelists Himadri, Prakash, Sandeep Mathur, Atanu, and Som. So again, welcome to this panel of Exploring Light with Xtra Bytes. My question, there are many. So I've been really studying about a lot of things today. So my first question is that one incident happened in 2018. Can you throw some light on that? 2018. That your house.
2000. Yeah, that was a really difficult year. It was actually an awesome year for me until it wasn't. The very end of the year in November, I had decided to finally give myself my dream office that I had always wanted. And instead I went one step further and I got this fantastic house in an inspiring place with panoramic views, wall of glass all out one side of it. Every single room in the house was dedicated to something that I was going to be doing with my photography. So I had the printing room and the video room and the writing room, and it was going to be awesome. And it lasted exactly 1 week after I moved in. And then it all was incinerated one morning when the Paradise campfire burned through Northern California and just completely wiped out the whole town. Completely wiped out the town and left my house just a pile of ashes with a chimney sticking up, and that was it. So I lost everything in that home and office. So that was really tough.
And you were there when this happened?
Yes, yeah. Well, I was there that morning. I had just unpacked my last box the night before. And I was celebrating that by going out that evening to shoot sunset. So I grabbed my backpack, I went out, I shot, I brought everything back, put the files on my computer and went to bed. And that the next morning I woke up and I just saw this incredible glow in the room, like this wonderful, beautiful, warm glow. And I thought, that's amazing. This place, I didn't know this town very well. I'd moved to a whole new town. I was like, wow, they have super interesting sunrises here. So yeah, so I ran to get my camera. as one does, right? So I went and my big camera was kind of still packed away, but I had a little Canon M50 mirrorless handy. So I ran outside with that. And I was taking pictures, and there were these this low shelf of clouds that were turning purples and deep, dark red. And I was like, wow, that's super amazing. And so, all right, go in for breakfast. I'm sure it's pretty much going to end soon. So go back in for breakfast. And I went back towards my office, looked in the bathroom as I was passing by it, and the door was open, and the glow was even more intense. It's even more red, and it was like red everywhere. And I was like, wow, they have crazy sunrises here that just keep going. So I went back out with my camera again. Only now things looked like the beautiful purple cloud was now getting more and more black. Oh. And I was like, that doesn't look, that's like maybe not a sunrise. And right as I was thinking that, the woman across the street was pulling out in her car, backing out, and her husband had come out to get the newspaper or something. And she said, she rolls down the window and says to him, honey, just so you know, there's some really bad fire smoke out here. And then she drives off to work or whatever. And I was like, fire? I'm standing out in front of my house thinking, really? No. And then I went inside and I just started doing some Googling to see if there were any fires reported. And there was something small about, I think it was 30 miles away at the time. And I thought, or maybe it was 60 miles. I don't know. It was far enough away that I thought, could it be that? That seems like that's kind of far away. And it was really small. But at least when it was reported, it was small. That fire was tearing through and growing so fast and going so big that I think they said within like an hour, they were 200-foot tall walls of flames. And, it had basically just traveled. And then by that point, when I was Googling that, it had already consumed a large portion of my town, but I didn't know that. So I had to evacuate that morning and get out of there.
I actually saw the video that you
we saw the video
later on, like saying that you posted made from your car. You did not have your network and you had made 2 videos. So I actually saw that and prayed for you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. I get myself in all kinds of crazy stuff in the mountains, but because I get myself into them, I know I can get myself out of them. This was different. I knew I was helpless. I was stuck in traffic for 3 hours. The daytime turned black as night. All the automatic headlights went on all the cars, and it's like 10 a.m. in the morning, and it's pitch black. And there's embers flying around, and what are you going to do? It's a total gridlock of traffic. You can't get out and run. So it was terrifying.
And so this could be devastating for anybody. And you were there and you saw it happening. And so how did it impact you emotionally or otherwise as well? And could you save something, or that was on your mind, that save at least camera equipment like photographers do, or you were just trying to move out as fast as possible?
Well, at first I was thinking, there's no way this is happening to me. I just moved into this house 1 week ago. This is not how things go for me. I live a charmed life, like bad things just don't happen to me. But I grabbed my camera bag, my laptop, and that was it. I didn't even have a change of clothes, just clothes on my back. And I had a little overnight bag that I take like on airplanes. So I had some toiletries, but that was it. So it affected me long-term over the course of, to now. I mean, really, actually, there were 2 waves of when it really affected me. Immediately when I had, suddenly had no home, no office, and I have this, I run a business, so trying to keep everything going. And basically it was just a big game of triage of just trying to keep my life on track. Yeah. And that was tough. And when I got back around to being able to shoot and everything, I found that my creative approach, rather than trying to sort of like address the fire and reinvent myself and think through these kind of psychological issues on that level, instead, it was just the opposite. Creatively, I was just doubling down on Erin. It was like I'd lost everything that reminded me of who Erin was. So I had to go back and I hadn't lost the files. Like I had my photos. Fortunately, I have everything backed up, but in the cloud. But still, I just needed familiarity in my life. So I was finding great comfort in going to places that I knew very well, in doing things the way that I felt very confident and comfortable doing them. And it was not a time of experimentation for me. It was just the opposite. But then the second wave, that happened during the pandemic. And I'm just starting to get my footing back on that, but it's still very difficult because I still hadn't got a new house. I've been basically homeless and displaced for over a year now. Bought a house, but I'm not in it yet. I'm renovating it. And so here I am, here the pandemic hits. And again, I'm supposed to shelter in place and I have nowhere, I don't have a house. So this was maybe even tougher for a while there. That was really, really challenging for me. And because I'm here, this is actually just a temporary office on property that my mom owns in her backyard. And so I'm just sort of taking care of her, and she's very remote. And so I didn't have internet for a while. And I just, as the whole world was going online and doing webinars and all this cool stuff, I was just getting cut out of, everything that I love and hold dear. And that was tough. That was super tough.
Yeah.
But now I have internet. so that's good.
Yeah. Wonderful. So moving on from there, you were a historian, but then you moved on to photography. So tell us something about your journey from doing what you were doing that time, and then suddenly taking a photography, and then that to landscape photography, and how did that change happen, and what was the transition? What triggered your thoughts to really leave that totally behind and get into photography full time?
Yeah, that was a long, agonizing, slippery slope where I loved being an academic because I loved being able to write. I loved being able to teach. Because I was a classicist, I specialized in ancient art. I did a lot of archaeology, spent a lot of time in the Middle East. So I loved traveling. I used to get up at 3 a.m. to go swing a pickaxe. I was into that kind of stuff. So I got to go to exotic places, do adventurous things, teach, write, all of this. And it wasn't until I realized, and I was slowly getting into photography just in support of like my dissertation. I was doing my Ph.D. in photographing the archaeological stuff and basically making slides and stuff that I could use for teaching. And it was really fun, like really fun. Like I really enjoyed the photography. And I was finding excuses to do more of the photography. And it took years until I was finally like, I really just love the photography, but I can't give up this career that I've put so much into, until I realized that I wouldn't be. All I would be doing is taking all that stuff that I love to do and just putting it to work in a new career. So it was building, not giving up. I still go to exotic places. I still write. I still teach. I still get up at 3 a.m. and do crazy things. It's all the same, really, except that I don't have to spend a lot of time in dusty underground libraries poring over moldy books. Yeah,
that's interesting. So, did you ever feel after that that you made the wrong decision, or did that thought ever cross your mind ever?
Not once I did it, because I was, instantly, I'm very grateful for this, but I was instantly quite successful. So that worked out really well for me. But at the time when I made that decision, everyone thought I was crazy, because I had a very, very good thing going. I was at UC Berkeley. I had a rosy career ahead of me there as an academic, and to essentially walk away from that, everyone thought I was absolutely nuts. And so I was scared, but when I did it, I announced that I was going full time, it was like, boom, like my career just took off like a rocket. And just, I'm very grateful. I guess that I think the timing was just really good. I could see that the anvil was hot. It was time to strike, and that it was just a good time for me to do that. And And I was right about that, I guess. And so things just, to this day, I'm very, very grateful. I enjoy a very successful career, you know? And so no, I've never looked back or missed it. And I use all that stuff. You know, I still do research. I still do all the things that I love. So there's nothing to miss, really.
Yeah, there's nothing to miss. Yeah, so that's wonderful. But in your previous thing, you were documenting, if I'm not wrong. You were documenting those places and architecture and.
Yeah. So, I mean, my photography through my art history years was very documentary. Yeah. And that too is just, it was like this yearning, you know, I would go out and like, I was creative to a point. So I was taking photographs that were illustrative of what I knew was important of a location, of a temple, of a statue, of whatever. So, you know, and since I specialized in sculpture, I got to go into museums and when they were closed, and use lights and tripods when those weren't allowed. And, you know, and I could do whatever I wanted. I could look at a statue and figure out how to communicate to a student what's really special or important, notable about that thing. And because I got pretty good at that, I had those two things going for me, the knowledge of the artworks plus the ability to photograph them in that way. I got invited to do a lot of, hired to do a lot of assignment work. So I did that for about 5 years, and I got sent all over Europe and Israel and stuff to do that. And that was fun, but it's only creative up to a point, you know? And I would find myself thinking, you know, if I could just go earlier in the day, or if I could just go at a different time of year, and on second thought, never mind that temple, that mountain over there looks really cool. You know? And then I was just like, you know what, I just want to like go somewhere with my camera. And I used to be really into backpacking years before that, and I'd totally gotten out of it. And it was funny because this is back in the days before social media and before, before I even had a social network of photographers. So it had never occurred to me to take the camera into the mountains. Like that just wasn't even like on my radar. And then I was like, oh, I could totally just like do that again. And this time I'll bring my camera. That could be fun, you know? And it was fun.
It really was. I think we're all sure. So how about taking us through your images and whatever you want to share? That will be great. And then we keep back in between with the questions. I think time for the images now.
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. Oh, I guess I got to be on the right app first, huh? Because we had that problem when we were testing. So let's get over here. All right. And then we want to go to.
So, Erin, while you're sharing your screen, one small question. Yeah. Very intrigued by your background as a historian, and then you actually studied history and architecture, but it does not reflect in any of your shots, like any heritage sites. I've got one as my backdrop. I don't know if you recognize it. It's Humpty. What you're seeing, it's UNESCO.
It's very small right now, so I can't see it because I'm actually pretty far away from my computer.
So I haven't seen any pictures of such kind in your portfolio. Is that deliberate?
That's a great question, and I actually am I screen sharing? Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So where that comes out, I do have older shots from all those places where I went and did fun landscape stuff. But let me find like how that comes out in me now is in pretty much every shot I ever take, because I still think, like, for example, this one. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I called this one the Lost Ark because to me, it reminded me of some like ancient temple, that I used to photograph. It's in fact, a tiny little sand tufa, maybe 2 feet high, but I monumentalized it, sort of fantasizing about my archaeological days. And that's an approach that I have to mountains, to trees, to anything. I see them as monuments. And I can't unthink that. That's so ingrained in me. So I think I don't necessarily go to the archaeological sites. I just bring them with me, so to speak, you know? But yeah, that's a good question. I do, however, want to get back to a lot of the places that I used to photograph back in the day, because my style has changed a lot. Back then, like I said, it was more documentary. So taking a different approach would be fun for me. But yeah, so, you know, there's definitely that vein of my work. And since I'm talking about that, I mean, this sort of thing, whenever I am photographing features like this that are grand landscapes for the most part, I'm going right back to my archaeology days. So to me, that looks like a big castle or fortress or something, you know, I just see that. And I romanticize them a little bit along those lines, thinking about them in that way. Or for example, this one, again, looks like a temple of some sort. Or I actually called this one Liftoff because I also saw a rocket ship like blasting off. But being able to see things that aren't actually there and being able to sort of dream about them I owe that to my art history education. And I think it informs everything that I do. Much of what I photograph is story-based. So I whimsically, you know, I see these sort of whimsical ideas in things a lot of the times. Like, for example, this one, you know, to me, that looks like a sailboat or a figure being pushed through the frame, you know, with the wind at its back. And, you know, I owe that to that education that I have that gave me the ability to kind of interpret images a little bit. So yeah, it's a really good question. Is there anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Please. Go ahead. You're saying something?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, if there's anything in particular that you wanted me to address about my images, I'll be happy to do that. If you have questions like that.
Whatever your thoughts, please share that. But there's one interesting observation that I had. Well, I was checking your website that when people share their portfolios and their galleries on their website, they mention seascapes and mountainscapes and abstracts. But what you've done is something very interesting. So you are mentioning as dreaming, feeling, moving. What are your and how do you segregate them?
It's pretty straightforward for me. If something's literally moving in a scene, it probably ends up in the moving category. So like rushing water, or I used to have like long exposure clouds and stuff in there. I've forgotten what's in there now, but there's also sort of a double entendre there, in that I do feel though the images that I bother to process are the ones that I find are personally moving, you know, they move me. The dreaming ones, those are the ones that are especially dreamy, where I probably put more of me than the landscape into that image. You know, it's very personal. Yeah. And feeling tends to be the ones that are more rugged and textural. That's really a general breakdown there. But the feeling ones are also tends to be the more moody ones, and the like that kind of thing.
That's very, very interesting.
Yeah. Because I don't, you know, I'm not, unlike a lot of photographers, I think I've never had bucket list locations, and I don't think about landscape photography in terms of locations. To me, I think about aesthetics and stories. And so the location-based organization on my website didn't make sense for me to do it that way.
Yeah. Erin, one more question, specifically around your evolution as a photographer, right? I think you started, like you said, you started off as a documentarian, probably in the early 2010s or 2011, around that time. I've seen you evolving more into, I think, 2014 or 15, you know, like, the composition started coming up, and a little bit of basically the mood that you introduced now, the mountains, you know, how did that evolution take place, starting from a documentarian to, you know?
Yeah, it actually went way further back. I started with photography in 2004. and I started being a working photographer in 2009. So 2009 was when I was starting to do all the no, wait, that's not true. It's maybe earlier than that. 2000. No, I think it was 2009. 2009 was when I really started making money at it. But it was still documentary. And there was like this overlapping period. So yeah, it was about like 2010 was when I started doing my own personal work, when I started going back out into the mountains to do what I wanted to do, I think, around there. It was sort of like 2009 into 10, but by 2010 for sure, I was all about that. I was doing crazy stuff. I was all about taking strobist stuff. So I had about like 5 or 6 speed lights and a bunch of gels, and I would go out into the mountains and like illuminate bunkers and stuff. That's like how I started with that. And so I'm still thinking of the bunkers in terms of like their ancient history as war monuments or whatever, but just carrying that documentary past and that archaeological mind site with me. And then the more that I started to produce, because I was still an academic, the more that I started to produce images that had nothing whatever to do with my academic career, the more I wanted to hide the fact that I was doing that. So I had a pseudonym, Frasiclea Poiesin, which basically means Frasiclea made it. The girl who speaks a claim made it, to be completely literal. But and I could explain that, but never mind. Anyway, it was just a way for me not to have my academic colleagues see that I was moonlighting, as a photographer, especially as one doing something that had nothing whatever to do with ancient art and archaeology. So, slowly I just, got more and more into that, to where the landscapes were by far my greater output. And, so I think what you're asking about is like the professional transition. And so I totally stopped doing like I was also doing stock, I had a stock agency. I was doing a lot of that, and I just completely stopped contributing to the stock agency and started just building that Frasiclea Poiesin portfolio. And, it's like anything. If you're doing stuff that's kind of different, people will come to you. So I didn't even have to promote myself or put myself out there. These were early days of social media, like 2011-ish was, I think, when like 500px was starting to get going. And I was posting on there a little bit, but I've never been a really big social media person. I don't invest a lot of energy into that. But, there was definitely a buzz developing, and that's when it started to get very hard for me. I was like, wow, people are really encouraging me to do more of that. And I want to do more of that. Yeah. So anyway, did that answer your question?
Yeah. I was curious about your engagement on social media as well. It's by far probably from the A-listers that I consider you right on top, right? And I think your volume has been so selective in terms of what you publish on social media. You somehow have figured out a way to basically not bite the dust in terms of social media, right? So
there are certain photos that do most of the work for you. Some, like this one.
Yeah, this is favorite, absolute favorite, aerodynamic.
Yeah, thanks. So like certain photos that I almost did not release this photo. I sat on it for almost 2 years before I even processed it. And even then, I almost didn't put it out because I thought it was too much of me. It was like, that's so me. Like too much me, it's not. What's that?
It is you.
And
the sky is purple, the sand dunes are purple, so it is totally you.
And there's always this feeling that artists have that you need to keep reinventing yourself and not just rehashing or regurgitating what you do. But on the other hand, I thought about it, I'm like, no, it actually does make a really nice contribution to my portfolio. It is like totally compositionally processing everything is just what I always do. You know, that's my go-to decisions. But it all came together in a way that's, I think, special. And so I thought, no, I'm going to put that one out there. And I'm glad I did, because actually that one photo has just kept my social media accounts going. So, like, I didn't have to post again for about 6 months because it was just cooking for a while, you know. So, you know, I think it's, you know, what a lot of people do is they go the quantity over quality route. And instead of like just working really carefully, like I spent a lot of time processing that shot to get it how I wanted it. But a lot of people feel like the need to like be like a little hamster running on a wheel, constantly churning stuff out, you know, get it done, more, stay alive, stay visible. And in doing that, you end up putting out stuff that's just not your best work. And you just disappear and get lost and you don't stand out very well. So that actually can be counterproductive. You'll definitely grow more that way. You'll get more followers, but they're not the same quality of followers. You know, so you do need to like post a lot to grow your account, but you don't need to, you don't need to have a lot of followers to have a really quality group of people following you. Like the people who really care, that's really all you need to reach. Not those people who are sitting by the water cooler and could care less about what you're doing and they just like stuff, you know? You know what I'm saying? From a business standpoint, I'll be one of the few people probably who will admit this, but numbers are not everything. And I learned that pretty early on, that I could get more value out of a small audience and then and give them what they want by not wasting my time on just churning out stuff just to stay visible.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, wonderful point. Yeah,
such a good point. Erin, if you don't mind, this has been my favorite from your entire portfolio. I can keep looking at this for a long time, and like Atanu said, it reflects your favorite.
I'm even wearing this heart of this picture. Look at the flowers in my heart as well.
Love it.
Sorry, go on, Tom.
So
I love how often I have guys show up with purple shirts on my workshops. Like the women, you know, they always wear purple, but when the guys do it, I'm like, that's awesome.
That's a homage to you, right, Erin? Your homage. So I was actually very keen on this picture in terms of the processing that you have applied, right? Very intrigued by how did you do the tone separation between the sand, which is very close to the purple flowers, right? And then the sky. How did you create this tonal separation?
Well, yeah, this is all just basic stuff from color theory, basically. So I wrote that article on color theory a couple years ago or so. And a basic premise of color theory is that warm hues tend to advance and cool hues tend to recede. And there's a lot of scientific explanation for that I find fascinating, but utterly unhelpful for photographers, so I don't get into it. So I prefer to kind of dump the theory part and just take those practical points and put them to use and teach that. So cooler hues in the shadows, warmer hues in the highlights. But another thing about color theory is that colors tend to harmonize well when they're kind of in the same family. So if you can sample colors from one area of an image and infuse other colors elsewhere with those same hues, they all start to come together to have a color scheme that sort of vibrates together and harmonizes. So a lot of times what I do is I'll sample some of the sky color and bring it down into the shadows, and then I'll do the other way around. If there's something in the ground that I could infuse into the sky, and here I've done both of those things. Sure. So starting with the flowers as a base, I infused a little bit of lavender up into the sky, and then I took some of the blue hues and put those down into the shadows. And I do that kind of thing a lot, just to kind of pull it all together so that you don't have I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of photos where the sky seems to be kind of in a world of its own and it pulls apart from the land. And so I try to bring them all together to the extent that it still looks kind of natural, Although my images I don't attempt to make them look like something that just came right out of a camera. I do toe the line of surreality a little bit. I little pixie dust sprinkled in there to make them, look a little dreamy, fantasy-like. Yeah.
This looks very analogous, right? The palette that in the color wheel, I think you've chosen a very analogous.
Yeah. So those are easy. In my article, I recommended there are really 3 palettes that are easy to find in nature and easy to harmonize. There are lots of color harmonies, but there are 3: the analogous, the split complementary, and the complementary. You'll find very easily in nature. And because they're kind of more restrained color harmonies, they're also a little easier to manage. Things can get way far out there if you start getting into the triadic and the more complicated 4-point color schemes and everything. Those work really well for abstracts a lot of the time, or for cityscapes or fashion and that kind of thing. But in landscapes, they can get garish real quick. So yeah, I prefer those more simple schemes.
And is this a single shot, single exposure, Erin?
No, this is let's see. It's a focus stack for the foreground, but it's only because it's like 14 millimeter, and it's also a focal length blend. So I think it's like 2 shots for the foreground, and then there's another shot for the like about halfway up is mostly 24 millimeters, and then the very bottom part is 14 millimeters. And then what's in the background is all one. That's all one. So it's like 3 or 4, 5. I don't know. It wasn't an easy one to process, not because of that stuff, just mostly because getting those colors dialed in, especially between sky and landscape. That's why a lot of people are just like all about the small scenes. I think a lot, not only because small scenes are fun and different, but also they're way easier to process. Getting a sky dialed in is like that. You got to roll up your sleeves and put in some chair time. Usually, it's hard work. Speaking of small scenes, I do enjoy those as well. Here's one of my favorites. We're talking about favorite shots. And I do enjoy them. I shoot them way more than I process them. I find them fascinating. I'm always shooting them. Someday I'll probably go mowing through my incredible archives of them. But I like the ones where I found something that you don't often see in a small scene. So these are these crazy high tubes of salt that are about maybe 3 inches tall. Very rare creation where a salt basin was evaporating so quickly that the crystallized content of it just immediately hardened. And you got this. And it was this massive area of them that probably was only there for a couple weeks. And I was fortunate enough to have 3 different mornings to go photograph these. And I tried everything with them because I didn't know quite what to do with them. When I first started photographing them, I did the usual thing. Let's get out the long lens and shoot down on them like that. So I had at 100 millimeter, and I was up high kind of shooting down on them. And it didn't quite grab me. And I tried a lot. I tried grand landscapes with them, like make them really huge, and then we'll have the mountains in the background. And I tried that. And I tried shooting them like this, which is actually at 11 millimeters, and just right down on them to force some distortion out of the lens and get them to splay out in the corners. When I did that, I was like, woohoo, yeah, that's cool. I like that. But still then I was like, but what light should I do? So I tried it under a bright red sunrise, like total blood red sky. I threw a beautiful sunrise to do this. Could have been doing something else that used the sky, but I just wanted the red light on them. And it just looked like red salt. It wasn't that interesting. So then I tried again the next morning because I really, my first go-to was like, let's do the blue and yellow thing. That looks cool when the first hints of light rake across it. And I went back to that. So it's fun for me to have those challenges, to figure out something that I've never seen done before, because I don't have the ghosts of a million photographers in my head. And it's it's like a 3-day project that was really fun.
That's
There was another, I forgot to load up another one that I really like that isn't here. Let's see, I don't think it is. Yeah, no, I have another one that I call Rip Curl. That's, oh no, here it is. Yeah. So likewise, with the small scenes, I love it when they remind me of something that they're not. And so that previous one with the salt tubes, it looked to me like some little alien metropolis or something, like little alien skyscrapers, and got my imagination going. And this one looked to me like surf crashing up at my feet, like the sea foam coming in. It's really just 2 layers of mud, one dry, one kind of wet. But I just love that dither between the two, and it gets my imagination going. It makes me dream. And so when I can find those are the ones that I end up processing. And a really old one, this was back before mud tiles were really cool. This is a much older one. It was very popular when I first put it out because mud tiles weren't actually the thing back then. But it's reminded me of snake skin. I've had a lot of people tell me it looks like chocolate, which I don't quite get, but I saw snake skin, and so I thought that was kind of cool. So
I have a question on this one though. Like, there's a nice sheen on each bar of the mud cracks, and there's a nice contrast. I think in the previous one, the mud cracks one.
Did it not go back?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So there's a nice contrast between the soft shadows of the top, on the mud cracks on the tiles and the highlighted areas as well.
Yeah, that was what was so cool about this particular playa. It's one that I don't think anybody has ever found, except one of my other friends knew about it. But I don't think most people even know where this is. And there's no reason why a lot of people would be attracted to this playa, because it's hard to shoot grand landscapes with it. So, but it was awesome for abstract. So I took a lot of my workshops here just for that. So we would do a twofer, and we would go do something for sunrise and then do this for the late morning light. And the late morning light would beam off of these mud tiles like this, with this really, if you got, looking at the sun, so they were kind of backlit, you got this really cool like floating effect on the tiles. And that was because the sun was higher, and it was just the right angle, this playa, for that. So that was cool, yeah. So, so you asked me to show some of my favorites. So I'll just go to one of my more recent favorites. Now, I did this actually in 2018, but I didn't process it until about a year later, I think. And this is one that it's more classical, but I just love the subtlety and the tranquility of it. And it's one of my favorite places in the Dolomites, where to this day, the only other photographer I've ever seen there was a guy who had one of my photos on his phone and was very happy to find me there. And he had gone there because he'd seen my photo, and he was trying to figure out where in the Dolomites I'd taken this. And good on him, he figured it out, because I don't give any hints. But so it's it's very hard to find. It's out of the way. It's not where most people go. And so it's kind of always felt like my special place. And I was there just pre-workshop with a friend, with Sean Bagshaw, actually, and he was somewhere down in the river, I guess, at this moment. But we had a marvelous time with these wonderful, misty, moody conditions, and I just loved the little story there between the little tree kind of sagging over, curling over towards the mountain, which seems to gesture back towards it. And there just seems to be this little dialogue going on there between them, right as the light breaks through the atmosphere. And it's just utterly charming to me. So those sorts of stories and those moods and the dreaminess, that's what I'm usually after when I decide that I'm going to process and share a photo, that kind of thing. And likewise with something like this, which is it just obliterates all texture. It's about as minimal as you can get. But it renders the the landscape of sand dunes into almost like ocean waves or something, you know? And so it takes my mind out of feeling like I'm looking at sand dunes and somewhere else. And when I can get that, that's what I'm like, yeah, that's worthy of getting processed, you know? So, you know, it doesn't have to be lots of detail and you know, the really intense dialogue and all of that. It can be something that's just sort of evocative like that can really charm me. Shall I keep going, or did you guys have questions?
So yeah, I was just saying that I was on mute, but this is very evocative. So this is like, you know, I understand that this is probably you kept processing, you know, keeping the surreality in mind, and not, you know, not just so that it's a sand dunes, but just to probably, you know, show them that this is a silhouette, or this is a kind of what can I say, like abstract that I want to show you, and what is your imagination on this. And I love it. I love the color scheme.
Thank you. Yeah. I just want to say this one's actually a lot less processing than you might think. This one is the only thing that I did was change the hues.
Wow. Okay.
I was thinking that you reduced the kind of clarity and all, but yeah, that's great. If you
nope, it was a windy day. There's a lot of sand in the air that just obliterated all of the textures. It was very brown, and so I made it, you know, more. I imbue lavender and infuse lavender into almost everything that I do. So, so that's all. That's my touch there. But other than that, no.
But Erin, we see that the dunes that are closer to us in the foreground are darker, and the dunes that are far out are lighter. Is that a deliberate thing that you've done?
A little bit, maybe. I always do some tonal work, so a little bit of that, and I would have vignetted. I usually vignette things a little bit anyway, but no, this is a 400 millimeter shot. So those dunes in the foreground are much closer to me than the stuff in the background, and this is a sandstorm. So there's an atmospheric effect of lots of sand in the air, particulate matter in the air, causing those layers.
Right.
Okay.
So it's similar to this.
Oh yeah. This is
only this is like 70 millimeters.
Okay.
And a lot more sand in the air, maybe, I don't know, but definitely higher winds this day. And that's another one of my old favorites. And again, one where I've you know, put my lavender touch on it and changed the colors quite a bit.
Erin, could you go back?
Yeah, somebody wants to ask?
Yeah, I had a question about the previous one. Yeah, in the image that you have the same image in your website, and you have mentioned that it was it was a difficult condition, and also it was difficult for you to see properly because there was a sandstorm going on. Could you please elaborate on that? And also the second part of my question is, you have also mentioned that you see different elements that you find in the universe, like that is the earth, fire, water, and air in this image, right? So could you take us through your thought process a bit?
Yeah, that's pretty easy. So, so the second part was the elements, and what was the first part of your question?
The tough conditions.
The first
part, oh yeah, so it's 400 millimeters, right? Which is very hard to see with your eyes anyway. That's something that's really small, right? That's really far away. That's what I love about that focal length, is it enables you to find something that is not at all obvious. Wherever you're standing, there are about 1,400 millimeter shots. And finding the one comp, you know, that's really fun. That's an exploration process on its own right there, just going exploring with your telephoto lens. But also, if you saw the raw file for this, it's basically, it looks almost just like solid yellow, because there's, or brown, or, you know, you can see, no, sorry, that's the next one, that's solid yellow. This one's like brown, and you can see the layers, but just, you know, I mean, the layers are there, but it's like very much covered in all that sand that's flying around. So it's really far away, and there's all this, you know, haze. So it was very hard to see. And it wasn't, and so I'm trying to, you know, focus on the dune, the composition back there. And it wasn't until I saw it on the back of my LCD, I was like, that's freaking cool. I loved it. I could see the, you know, the fringes of on the tops of the dunes. That's backlit sand blowing off the tops of the dunes. Yeah. Right. So that's why it looks like there's like lines on them. That's just the wind blowing the sand and it's backlit. So the sun's going down behind me. I couldn't really see that until I took the picture. I could see it on my LCD. And then I thought about it. I'm like, well, and it's got, the sun is creating those backlit ridges. The wind is creating the atmosphere. The earth is created all of that sand. What the sand is on the dunes is all of the little particles from the mountains surrounding the dune field blowing off and gathering in one place. And then because it's evocative of water, you've got that element too. There you go, all four.
Awesome.
And just a follow-up question, specifically around your focus on composition. Every image that I've seen, I think, looks like you enjoy taking shots in varied light and just not like a golden hour person, right? Right? You put more focus on composition versus probably light.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love shooting in all sorts. Like for example, this shot here, that's a high sun during a snowstorm. So the sun's quite high. It's up above those mountains and behind it. Not quite midday, but definitely not golden hour. And it's just a snow squall passing over that mountain, and it's like it's taking a little shower in the snowstorm. So I loved that. This too. This is a midday shot, just with a lot of atmosphere, and just a little hole of the sun being able to get through there. This is a midday shot, and I love that it looks like atmosphere. It's actually just the bottom of a waterfall. But I love that kind of Rembrandt light all over the water and how crystally it looks. And there's areas that look like diamonds flying through the air. And so yeah, I mean, I have a lot of images that, you know, like this one too. This was midday, but during a rainstorm. Oh. So I really enjoy all sorts of light. I also, though, really, I enjoy mysterious photos when the elements can give that to me. And to me, mystery doesn't mean small scenes. It means, you know, either because the atmosphere or the light has given me a new way of seeing something, or it has hidden things that bring out features of, I don't know, of the world that aren't necessarily descriptive, but are more contemplative, or that are more dreamy, you know. If it weren't so early, I could probably be a little more articulate about that.
I have a question, Erin. See, around sand dunes, I'm going to take it because of sand dunes. That question that came to my mind. Now, sand dunes have been shot to death, like worldwide. It's one of the most clicked kind of landscape, or whatever you might want to call it, desertscape or something like that. Millions and millions of images have been clicked. Now, yeah, and whenever we go to click a sand dune or similar kind of a thing, which we have been seeing, and which fabulous images clicked by some wonderful photographers. So what is your take on getting inspired by the work of all these photographers? Because they ultimately become a part of you, your subconscious mind. And the moment you go there, you tend to look compositions which look alike. So how do you still find your uniqueness when you are there? Because your 3 sand dune images that we have seen, they are very, very unique. They're very different, and in terms of composition and light, use of light as well. So how do you manage that? And how do you stay unique despite all those influencing factors which are dominating in your mind?
Well, sand dunes are a perfect subject for answering that question, because I believe I could go out on the dunes and never stop finding things. I also have a huge collection of abstracts that I've shot on dunes that I should process at some point. The thing with dunes is that, yeah, there are certain features that you can look for and certain things that you can do that are more obvious. And the easiest way to do that is to go to the most common location, shoot the most common focal length at the most common time of day. And that's what you'll probably see is the most common type of options. So if you want to see things a little bit differently, it's a matter of, I always recommend to people, if you're in that situation and that's what you're seeing, do that first just to get it out of the way. You know, I don't believe that, I don't believe in this idea of, some people call it photographic celibacy, like try to forget everything you've ever seen, which I think is impossible. You know, we're bombarded with imagery from the moment that we're born, and embrace it. Don't try to, you know, suppress it. Work through it, not against it. So if you see stuff that you know, go ahead and do that, and then do whatever's next, you know, like it'll evolve. Try different focal lengths, walk further, explore more. Usually exploration, either through a long lens or through getting low and close to things or through literally moving your feet, is the first step in finding something that really speaks to you. I also recommend that people think, if you can, and this is tough because you're juggling a lot of balls when you're in the field, but if you can kind of also invoke the left side of your brain, you know, the more analytical side, and ask it to name things for you. Like I try to name my images sometimes, like what would I call it? If, you know, if something comes to mind very easily, you're probably onto something. And so I'll try to pursue that. But it's really the exploration that's the key. I think that's sort of like the watershed to all things you, because if you find something, you know, your own nose and your own sensibilities led you there, and then you figure it out. You know, how can I compose that? How can I process that?
Okay, wonderful. And there's another question that just came to my mind right now, is that, let us say a hypothetical situation that you go to a particular place, anything, it could be dunes, it could be anything, and you create your unique composition there. You figure it out, that appeals to you, and you are so happy, delighted about it. You come back, you process the image, and you will probably share it as well. And suddenly you realize and you find out there is somebody, XYZ, has already created a similar composition before you. How would you feel? Would you feel or what is it?
I've honestly have never had that. And that's probably because I go to weird places.
Yeah.
And I've had just the opposite, you know, where I've taken people to, like for sand dunes, for example, there's this one beautiful S-curve sand dune that I found years ago. Beautiful. It's like the most wonderful S-curve with a big dune at the end, and it frames up beautifully, and it's just situated to get just the right light and everything. And I've taken so many workshops there before I even got a chance to take a shot of it myself that I was really happy about. I'd taken just some like compositional sketches of it, but I'd never really seriously tried to shoot it. But I took, you know, so many people, and all of my co-leaders now have shots of that who had gone, you know, had been assisting me on those workshops, and all of my students, you know, and I can tell you about way more of those than the other way around, when I found something and other people already had it. I mean, if someone can think of something, very many of my shots, you know, are like that, where I've just like my mud tiles, for example, even just the aesthetic of them, you know, these older shots of mine, I took these back before mud tiles were popular. And the idea of doing a sort of wagon wheel composition with that radiating pattern was not a thing. And that helped me a lot, just to do things like that, you know, this is a little bit later. That one, I'm trying to find the one that really kind of kicked it all off. It's called Moon Dial. See if I have that in here. But, you know, and then eventually I started going to this more I actually found this more popular playa long before it was a thing. Oh, here we are. This is a really old shot. But so, you know, it's more often the other way around that because I tend to put myself in places where I don't have that problem. It's not that I'm not saying that I have any like special superpowers to find awesome things that other people can't find. Far from it. I go places where just most people don't go. That's all. It's that simple. And so I end up finding this stuff. And I really can't think of a single thing where I took it and then I was like, oh, hey, someone already did that. Maybe that'll happen someday, but and there was another one I was trying to find that's a good example of where I've taken, let's see. I have a kind of random sampling of images in here, but there's some ones from the Dolomites too, where, you know, I did something and then, you know, I took a bunch of people there. Oh, here I go. Like, this is a really old shot. So when I first started shooting this was before people even knew where the Dolomites were. This was before I started taking workshops there. And when people would ask me where I was going or where I'd been, and I'd say the Dolomites, the most common question was, the Dolomites, where's that? And I would say, oh, it's in Italy. And the next question would always be, Italy has mountains? It's not just like Pisa and Rome. That was the thing up until about, you know, when social media started. So when I actually first produced this image and was shooting in this area, I had some Italians tell me that I was doing it wrong because that's not where you're supposed to shoot the mountain from. You know, I mean, because it was very traditional to them. Like, no, there is a spot. It's the spot. That's where you go. But I didn't know that. I was just out there running around trying stuff out. I'm like, oh, here's a cool little, you know, some seasonal runoff. I bet that might align nicely with the mountain. Now I've taken probably a couple hundred people here with all of my workshops. And so you'll see this, and then there are all the people who found it afterwards. And so this is now, you know, very well-known scene. And then I have some like this one where I've never seen it again because it's seasonal and most people can't find that. And I have another one with double waterfalls, same thing. But yeah, I mean, you know, I like getting out there, finding things that are just not the typical shot. And again, it's not because I have great, you know, essential great superpowers or anything. It's just, you know, I don't like going places where for one thing, where I'm going to have to jockey for position with other people. I like to be able to hear myself think. And also I enjoy the challenge of finding stuff.
That's fantastic. Just out of curiosity, where did you begin your landscape photography? Which was the first place where you started experimenting with landscape photography?
Slovenia, in the mountains of Slovenia.
Okay.
I mean, not Greece. I mean, that's where I was doing the documentary style stuff. And I got a little bit away from the temples and did a little bit like in gorges and stuff up in northern Greece, but mostly Slovenia. And that started when I was working on my dissertation and I was feeling trapped inside having to write, and I wanted to do anything but, because I had this gorgeous mountain view out of my 11th story apartment. And so I would just open up the window every morning with my telephoto lens and just shoot landscapes of the mountains watching the sunrise. And I found all sorts of things to do just without ever leaving my apartment. You know, and then it was just a matter of time before, like I said earlier, where I was like, I could just go into the mountains. Like, I used to love that. Why don't I do that again and take my camera with me this time? No one's going to tell me I can't use a tripod there, which I got all the time in some of these archaeological parks.
Erin, I'd like to ask you a question. Like, it is just out of curiosity. Like, from what I have seen and from what I have read about you, you are an explorer first and a photographer second, if I'm not wrong.
I don't know how I would define those two things, but but I think that would be a fair assessment, because I've definitely spent probably more time out exploring than I have out photographing. So on that point, it would be fair. Oftentimes I'll get to a place with an idea in mind, and it's like, it's weird. It's like this magnetic lure just pulls me deeper into whatever wilderness I'm out into. And I'll feel like, oh, I was going to shoot this, but I wonder what's over there. So, off I go.
So could you take us a bit through your like backstories behind a few exploration kind of expeditions, or something that you found out on your own? Like, say for example, the Dolomites, because you went to the Dolomites when it was not even popular, and you started exploring it. You started bringing it back to us, and that is when we came to know about it. So the behind the scenes shots, or a few stories where, and also another thing, like you had vertigo before, but you like took care of it. Yeah.
Wow, you guys have done your research.
So I mentioned I've been following you for quite a long time. So
that's awesome.
These questions are coming out like that. So could you tell a bit about your exploration and associated backstories or associated behind the scene images?
Well, I'll just, the part about vertigo, that was the thing for me. Yeah, it's interesting that I almost got over it too much. Now I'm at the point where I lack a healthy dose of it. It's weird. So I started out, and this was in the Dolomites, and there are these little trails where you have to go along what's called a Via Ferrata, the Iron Way, and you have to hold on to a little iron cable. And sometimes the footpath is like this, or not even that. It's just like pegs. And I got, so scared of those. Sometimes I would just freeze up, and it would ruin my whole day. Like, I would go through it, but it was hard for me. And then eventually, just doing more and more of that, I got to the point where I completely lacked like the ability to say that's dangerous. And now, and like one time I was going on a long Via Ferrata, and I got myself into a situation where I probably could easily have died. I was on a cliff face with 1,000 foot of exposure beneath me. And I had my full gear on, my backpack with the tripod, and, big one, the big suka with all the stuff in it. And I was hanging on these pegs, and there was this undercut rock, and I couldn't reach the next peg. And the only thing that I could do was go back up, but I couldn't, because I was so tired from doing Via Ferrata for like 2 hours that I couldn't do that either. And so I just like screamed, like I used to see climbers do. And I thought, all right, that must be how you do this. It's like, and I somehow got myself back up. And then I had to go back through the whole Via Ferrata for 2 more hours because I couldn't go down, only to find out in the end that I was going the wrong way on the route. You're supposed to go up that, not down that. But the fact that I even got there, because I had so many points where I could have turned around that were also scary, where I had to take my backpack off, put it up on a little ledge, shove it over, get up on the ledge, shimmy over. I was doing crazy stuff. And in retrospect, it's like, I would never have done that back in the day. And I just got to the point where I didn't have a good sense of what was really good for me. Now, I just should say, I do not take my students on this kind of stuff. This is all just me with a friend or someone, but I don't get other people into, I'm actually just the opposite. I'm really kind of paranoid about people getting hurt on my workshops, but yeah. So, and then you just like BTS, what?
I'm just saying, then what's the point of joining workshop? If you don't get us to all those fun stuff.
It's funny. I used to do a Dolomites extended edition workshop where people had an optional 4-day go hard, extended, like extreme experience that they could opt for and pay a little more and do that for 2 days. And I did it twice. And both times, only half of the people in the workshop wanted to do that. So it worked out to be just a total wash. It was like from a business standpoint, not a great use of my time, but it was super fun. so I really enjoyed it. But people do want that. I mean, still half of the people were like, yeah, I want to go do crazy stuff.
But via feeders are really scary. I mean, I have, it's really scary. I mean, when you just hold the rod and you don't feel that, and when you feel that you don't have anything else on your feet except just the rod, and it's really scary. And when you see the exposure, it's really scary. But I can imagine that why people drop off. I tried that a couple of times, and it is scary. I mean, I managed to do that, but it's really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, even on my extreme experience, I wasn't taking people on that kind of crazy stuff. It was a little bit crazy though.
So do you have any images of that rock ledge or the surroundings?
I do actually.
Yeah.
I would have to go to my web. I think there might be one on my website. If you guys Google me, there's one of me hanging off of the ledge like that. I was on my way down. It's like I'm in the snow and I'm coming down. I don't know where I could find it. It might be on my website. I'm not sure, but yeah, I actually. There's a photo of me with my backpack on right before I went onto that boulder. And I'm in a couloir at the top of a mountain. And yeah, that was nuts. I have all kinds of crazy stories.
I was hoping you would also show flowers for miles. That's one of my personal favorites again.
Oh, you want to see that one? Yeah, I can pull that. That's an old one.
You don't tag that as a favorite anymore. Any reason?
I didn't bring it up as a favorite. It's it's just where is it? I would say to me that one is now so it's old work. Here it is.
It is old.
I love this area, and gosh, I don't know, why is it not a favorite? I guess I've just looked at it too much. Maybe that's it. Did I just freeze up? Is this still working?
No, you're there.
Okay. Yeah. So I love this spot, and people, this is one of the most requested spots when I take people on my Dolomites workshops. They want to go to the spot. And actually, this is the boulder that keeps on giving. This is a boulder covered with flowers. Those little flowers are dinky. And the reason I called those flowers for Miles, by the way, is do you guys know Miles Morgan, the photographer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he was. So this was back in the days of 500px, and he was giving me a hard time for not putting out any photos in a long time. Like, I think I had commented on one of his shots. He was like, "Where's your work? Come on, put something out." And so I posted this one like a couple days later. And so it was a double entendre. It looks like flowers going on for miles and miles and miles, but it was also flowers for miles. So. I don't know if he knows that.
I like the visual flow in this. This is something incredible, because the way eyes lead into that and how the glow is really captivating you there, and it's amazing.
Thanks. Oh, it's nice to know that the old work can still appeal. I guess I've used it in so many talks, in so many articles. It's kind of like, I don't know, maybe I've just looked at it too long. I don't see it anymore. But I do still love it. I love these kinds of conditions, and it took me days to get this shot. I was there not even seeing the mountain for the first 2 days. It was socked in with mist. And even on this day, there's a time lapse in one of my promo videos for the Dolomites on YouTube, where you can see a time lapse of this moment. And the mountain comes out for literally like a couple minutes. That was it for my whole 3-day experience up there.
Erin, I've been seeing your work. So in terms of landscape, what we see in your work is mostly mountains, some deserts, and maybe some abstracts, but hardly any seascapes. Any particular reason?
Yeah. I do have some, and that's a really good observation. For whatever reason, the sea is such a special place to me. It's ironic that I grew up around the ocean. My mother lived aboard on a boat while I was growing up. I spent much of my summers living on a boat and going to Catalina Island and stuff like that. And there's something about the ocean that when I go there, that's a different kind of experience for me, I guess. Yeah, and I guess also, yeah, they also tend to be more accessible areas where you're around people more. Okay. Seascapes, you know.
Yeah. So probably it's also to do with your adventurous streak that you are attracted towards mountains more than any other part.
Well, I'm attracted to wilderness, you know. So if you put me in a coastal area that's really remote, I'd probably love it. Yeah, I don't know, but where would that be? There's not too many. Yes, that's what I love about mountains and the desert is these big expansive areas where I can go out and just hear myself think and explore and find stuff that speaks to me. That's really fun for me. And I also have quite a lot of forest images, by the way, that I've never processed. I've got a bunch of rainforest images and redwoods images. They're just sitting on my hard drive waiting for the day that I decide to do something with them. I have the most insane backlog of photos that are not processed. It's kind of ridiculous. But that's not because that's more so because just me having a lot going on. Like ever since my house burned down, and I've just been working double time just to kind of keep things moving so that I can eat and stuff like that. So I very much look forward to getting my new office renovated and having some time to dig into that kind of stuff.
All right. And so there is one question from on YouTube that unlike most photographers, I don't see many fiery sunsets or sunrise or too much contrast in colors in your images. Any particular reason?
Yeah, the fiery sunrises and sunsets. I have a few from my in my old. Well, one of my recent ones actually, and I'll explain that. How do I do this again? Like this. All right, let's. So let's see. This one. Here we are. So I put this one out. Is it showing?
Yeah.
Fairly recently. I shot that right after my house burned down. So that was me kind of going back to old school. That's what I said. Like I doubled down on the old stuff, you know. I was like, I'm going to go shoot some grand landscapes with a red sky, you know. And this is 11 millimeters, ultra wide, you know, just going for it. And it was fun. But what really speaks to me about these sorts of landscapes, in this case, I called this one the missing piece, because I saw in the sky, it looked to me like the clouds are delivering that whole, that piece that matches the ones on the ground. And I love that correspondence. I love the story there. Like the clouds are just swooping in, like they're like, here you go, you forgot one, you know. I just love that. So to me, it's not just that I got a cool sky, it's that I got one where I saw a story. So I just become more selective like that. And as far as like colors, you know, this one again is very much shifted with the colors. All of my images undergo a lot of color work, so that you don't get those huge separations between sky and land that I was talking about earlier. So, you know, some of my older stuff, like this one too, you know, the colors from the ground are repeat in the sky. And I brought, even back then I was doing that. So that was just a really radical sky. And that's also in the Dolomites, but I don't dislike doing that stuff anymore. It's just that I'm looking for other things, I guess.
Erin, just another contextual question. Do you draw any lines when it comes to post-processing? Because you put so much importance on composition. So I'm assuming you get most of it right on the field. So how much do you put in post-processing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I always say that I'm relatively conservative with post-processing, but that's relative to, the extremes of people who create fantasy worlds, like they put lakes in front of mountains where they weren't there. So I'll do things like a focal length blend, which a lot of people would consider pretty radical. But that started out there as like, as a way of kind of bringing back a mountain that got squashed by a wide angle lens and stuff like that. But I fully believe that anyone who wants to do anything in post-processing should do whatever their creative mind is inspired to do. I'm fully supportive of that creative ethos. I, however, am very based in like stories, not only the stories that I see in the landscape, but the stories that I have of my own experiences in them. And so there's a certain line there for me, just where I start to recognize my experience or I don't, right? So that's very subjective, and that's not, really a firm line, but it's a line for me. And as far as what else I'll do with colors or tones or any of that, did I just freeze? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Erin.
Oh, okay. You guys froze for a minute there for me. Okay, so yeah, with regards to anything else, the world is your oyster, I believe, and that's the way that I teach. With post-processing, I think it's a joy and an outlet, and I truly believe that art is essential to the wellness of humanity, and people need it. We need that personal expressive outlet, and people who view it also get a lot out of it that they need to see. They need to know that there's something beyond just the obvious and that was there, and they want to have that interpretive side. They want to be able to see into the person who saw something, and if I can bring that to someone, I think that's a better accomplishment than creating some kind of redundancy or at best a souvenir of some cool thing that I saw. I hope that explains.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. There's another good question on YouTube by Subhadeep. By Subhadeep Pundia. Great or grand locations or any other location with personal connect, what makes a landscape more interesting from perspective of art?
I didn't hear that. What makes a landscape what?
So great locations or any location with personal connect that you have. So, so what is your choice that makes a good landscape?
Oh, that's a great question. I have photographs that have come out of areas that aren't especially grand. The reason that I venture into wild places and into grand landscapes is that I can get out far away from anything that's distracting to me, and that's an immersive experience that I really enjoy. But you can create awesome stuff in your backyard. You don't need that necessarily. If you want to do grand landscapes, which I think is what that question was about specifically, even the most sort of mundane grand landscape can become special with the right light and the right composition that will bring it out, whatever that is. So that's oversimplifying a bit, but I definitely don't feel like you need to go really far, really remote, unless that's what turns you on. It's really what turns you on. Where do you find inspiration? Go there.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. But extension to that question, that answer, what is your take of the iconic locations? Probably we have seen that you don't really bother about iconic locations, but still, you don't even get tempted to go there, or you only want to pursue what you're trying to do, go to unique places, finding unique spots, even if you have to really hike a lot or get into dangerous kind of trek as well. But do you consider these iconic locations photography as also a part of landscape photography, or you have some different thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, that comes back to like what's fun for me personally is where I can figure things out. And sometimes a lot of my shots are actually taken like on the fringes of very iconic locations. You know, I didn't have to go far. But iconic locations are marvelous for a reason. And people who are drawn to them, that's a good place to start and a great place to learn. To figure out, you know, how best to show off that place, because it is possible to take a really unimpressive shot of a very magnificent location. You know, it's not always easy. So to figure that out with the timing and the processing and everything is a wonderful learning exercise. And because these places are so rewarding, it's just fun to be there. So when sometimes I'm with friends and that's where they want to go. And I'll go, and I may not process those shots, but I sure have fun shooting them.
That's wonderful. Any other panelists would have any question? I might.
There was one question from Subhadeep. Again, I think he self-admittedly has been following you for a very long time. One of our friends. He's on YouTube right now. He asked a very good question once again, which might interest you. So. Here he goes. With many photographers going onto Nikon or Sony, Erin has stuck onto using Canon. Even though brands are brands, these days Canon is considered probably, you know, not right up there compared to the sensors that Nikon or Sony have. What do you think about that, right?
Well, I use the tools that do the job the way that I want to do it. And I've always shot Canon, always. And I've loved how reliable those cameras are. They get the job done for me. I've never felt held back by my cameras. So people who feel though there's another sensor that gives them some kind of edge that I don't have, then they should use that. but I love my cameras, and Canon, you know, recently made me an Explorer of Light, and has been very supportive of me over the years. So that was all just like reinforcing my decision to stay with Canon. I was like, that's awesome. And in addition to the fact that I really love their products, this brand is very supportive of me, you know? And so it goes both ways. So that's pretty cool too. But you know, that's like one of those leapfrog things. You know, you can never, if you're one of those people who's just going to keep leaping to what you think is the next cool camera, that could be fun for you. Like people who are really into gear will do that, but you'll waste a lot of time and money, and I don't know. Canon's cameras at one point with landscape photographers were the only choice, and then there became more choices on the market, and things kind of spread out a little bit. I won't be surprised if things change. Especially now that Canon's got the R5 coming out. I think landscape photographers are going to be returning en masse from some of those other brands to that camera. But you gotta use the camera that works for you. And I still have I sold my 5D Mark II, but my 5D Mark III is still around as a backup camera when I'm doing video. Sometimes it's a third camera in a shoot, and that thing has been encased in ice, blasted by sand, dropped in the ocean. That poor thing has been through everything, and it still works perfectly. So that says a lot, you know.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Erin, going back to what you said earlier, you started naming your images, or maybe you've been doing it for a long time. So when do you start naming your image? When you take it, when you shoot it, when you sit down to edit it, or once the post-processing is done?
All of the above. It really depends on the image. But it's cool when I have a photo and like its name occurs to me in the field. That's a strong story there. I love that. And then there are the ones where there's a story there, but finding a way to name it is hard. And so I understand the story, but to come up with like kind of a name that's not too trite or doesn't sound corny. Yeah, that can be work. So that comes sometimes at the end.
Any plan visit a tropical location? That's something that's missing from your portfolio. Like
yeah. I crave that. There are probably some cool places in India I should go, but I really would love to get out to, I don't know, like maybe the Seychelles, or I don't know how remote those are. I just fantasize as them being like remote, but so I would love to do more tropical.
You could try Bali.
Bali could be cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Erin, there has been one question in my mind from the beginning, and I think this is the right time to ask. See, whenever you start photography, most of the people we meet, I think it's the same with you as well, who come to your workshops, and they want to, if they are in the job, they want to really beat the stress, have some fun while doing photography and exploring those wonderful places and creating great images. So whenever we start, we want to have fun. Everybody tells us that have fun. But somehow, somewhere down the line in this process, there's a competition, there is social media pressure, and most important, your own expectations. They start they're putting too much of pressure on you. And probably at times, life also starts becoming stressful for many reasons, like I mentioned. So does this happen to you as well? And if yes, then how do you deal with that? How do you still keep that fun part alive?
It's weird. I've had this conversation with so many of my photographer friends who are excellent, creative people. And it's interesting how some of them really get into these ruts. And it always seems to be focused on social media and validation and likes and that kind of thing. And that may be why I actually don't have that problem very often, because I don't put a high value on social media. I rarely post, except when I have something I really want to share. I like to share stories on Instagram and stuff like that. I like to be social on social media, but I'm not playing the game. And I guess that gives me the freedom to do what I find fun. So I can't ever remember a time when I was feeling creatively stifled, right? I have definitely felt times when I felt overwhelmed with work and wished that I didn't have to do so much office work and I could just go out and do more personal shooting, but that's a whole other thing. That's just like me biting off more than I can chew with my business, and or just being really slowed down by losing my house and stuff like that. Pandemic, there are all kinds of things that can get in the way of the business side of things, but the creative stuff remains fun so long as you don't have those expectations. And I suspect social media is making that worse for artists these days.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And but you also mentioned that being in that creative rut, people get into that. So I think creativity itself could be confusing to many. It could be very, very, everybody would have their own opinion about it. But how do you deal with that? Because what could be creative to me might not be creative to you. And that kind of creates a lot of confusion around it. So what in that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. To me, a lot of people misunderstand the difference between creativity and novelty, right? They're not the same thing, right? Creativity is just putting some of yourself into the image, finding something, some way of doing something that is kind of your own. And actually, I have something I can share with you guys right now that is what I have to say about that, and a talk that I recently put out. And I'll just share those. I think I have those slides at the end here somewhere. But your style, I feel, it comes down to these three things. And this is basically what drives creativity: what you find, what you form, and what you feel. So what you find, that for a landscape photographer would be either features or conditions usually, and you can find those things on your own. That's being creative. What you form, your composition, and any effects you might put in there, like creating a sunstar or something like that. Those are decisions that you make, creative decisions that you make. And if you formed that composition rather than just copying one, then you're being creative. And then what you feel. And that's uniquely you as well. So the mood of an image and stories that you want to tell. So it really comes down to like the bones of the image, the skin that you put on it, and then its soul. You know, what lies underneath all of that. And that, to me, that's what creativity is. Creativity is not coming up with something that's wholly novel and unlike anything that's ever been seen before. You know, that's a narrow case, a narrow slice of what creativity can be. If that answers that question.
First time we can get the clarity of thoughts behind what is creative and how it is confused with the novelty. And I think that's a wonderful answer. Now, another extension of that question that just cropped up in my mind is that, do you think that people are born creative, or you also feel that creativity can be developed over a period of time, and people can still find and grow to be creative even when they felt that they were not earlier?
Yeah, I absolutely. This is a great question. I believe creativity can be taught in that you can coach it out of people. That's why in my Instagram profile, I call myself a creative coach, right? Because that's what I feel like I do as an educator. So I'm just coaching people how to bring that out. It's already in them. I'm not giving them the creativity. It's definitely in there, but sometimes people don't know how to tap into it. And so if you can get around someone who can give you the sort of help you to tap into that, give you a kind of framework for understanding what it is that you're doing and what it is from your decision-making process that is yours. That's, people get so jazzed when they get a little taste of that. And they're like, oh yeah, I did that. That was me. And, and they go off and do more of that. And I've seen so many people totally blossom. You know, I've had hundreds and hundreds of students now over the years. And I've seen all kinds of things, from people who just come in and they're on fire right off the bat to all they know is imitation, which is a great way to start out, but they just don't know what else to do from there. And we do some seminars, we get them in the field, they try some stuff, make some suggestions, encourage something. And next thing you know, I've seen guys go, or women or whatever, from literally from like day 1 to day 3 on a workshop, blowing my mind. You know, I had a guy out in Death Valley, I think it was in my master class in December, or maybe one before that last year, but he absolutely blew me away. Like day 1, he couldn't find a composition to save his life. Like he could not compose his way out of a paper bag on day 1. It was almost scary. It was like, wow. Like I would explain something, he would show me on the back of his camera, like, okay, let's go back to point A. And then like this little light went off on him. I don't know what it was that we did. One of the seminars maybe. And then the next day he came, he's like, hey, Erin, how about this one? I was like, whoa, like he just found something amazing. And then from then on out, he was just smoking. So it's amazing what people have inside of them that just needs to be coaxed out.
How does it feel to really when this kind of incident happens? Then how does it affect you as an individual, positively?
That's when I have those kinds of experiences, that's kind of partly what I'm in this business for. Yeah. I thrive on teaching. I genuinely love teaching. I feel as though it's my duty. It's a service that I'm doing to the world because, like I said, the world needs art. And those people, I have people coming to me who are, they're hurt in a lot of ways. They've got stuff going on. Life can be tough. And they needed that workshop so bad, and they come out of that like just a much happier person with tools to keep it going, and man, that's so rewarding.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I have many questions, but anybody wants to ask anything?
I'm a little concerned that my camera might run out of its battery. So just so you know, I'm using a DSLR with a camera with a battery in it.
Oh man. Okay. Have you ever? Okay, now it could be a very cliched question, but how much gear is important to you, camera gear is important to you. And second part of this same question is that, have you ever felt that some part of your camera gear actually became a hindrance to your creativity, or you're creating a great image which you later felt that you could have easily created if it was not for a particular camera gear or equipment?
I didn't hear that last part. Have I created an image where I felt like I didn't need the gear to do it?
No. Where you felt that you could have done it much easier had it not been for that particular gear that you were carrying, which actually became a hindrance in your creativity. Maybe setting it up, or maybe thinking too much because of it.
Yeah, I mean, for that latter point, for sure. Before I got my 11mm lens, I was going way out of my way to take what would be the equivalent of an 11mm composition by doing a whole bunch of stitching, with like a 16mm. And man, is that a lot of work, especially when you're also doing things like focus stacking and blending for dynamic range or whatever. So yeah, once the 11 came out, I was all over that. So that was a point where the gear really helped me a lot. But I have one of the shots that I was showing you guys earlier where I said it looked like a sailboat going through the scene. That's one of my favorite images. And I took that with an APS-C camera. It was with the M50. So, and that was because my big camera was off somewhere else, like all dialed in on some other composition where I was waiting for the clouds to do something interesting. And I just happened to have that one around with me because I would use it to show the students stuff because I had a swivel screen. So like, oh, look, you could think about this kind of thing. And while I was over doing that, this cool stuff started happening with the mist. The best camera's the one you have with you, right? So that's just an APS-C, like consumer level camera. And that image, I haven't actually printed it, but I can tell it's going to print beautifully. Because I mean, just 5 years ago, that's what full frame sensors could do, not the way the technology is advancing. So, nobody's throwing away their shots from 5 years ago just because they can't print them that little bit extra larger or whatever.
Yeah. So
I think gear matters until it doesn't. There's a point where you can't do something, or you have to go way out of your way to do it. And then there are also times when the gear is just. I've seen people show. I had a guy show up at one of my workshops with all brand new, like about $250,000 worth of camera gear, like all medium format digital. And a full set of full frame stuff too. And he was swimming in gear and he barely got anything done because he was just playing with that all the time and constantly trying to like organize it. And so that there are extremes to that, the gear thing. You can take it too far for sure.
That's interesting. We spoke about, initially we did a mention about Photo Cascadia. So can you throw some light on that? What is it? What is what is the team and what do you all do under that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Just since I think we're kind of getting close to wrapping up here. So I will go back to my little, oh no, wait. No, I don't want to do that. Firstly, I have to I've got the Photo Cascadia website queued up here. So this is, let's see, do you see that? No, you don't.
Yeah.
Went back to PowerPoint. Okay, let's try again. I want to go to Photo Cascadia. So Photo Cascadia is a team of 7 nature photographers. We're now in our 11th year. So we are, let's see if this works. No go. I don't know why I can't get it to share. Come on. We basically collaborate on projects together, such as books. And I wanted to show our new book that's out, which is now in pre-order. You can get it, if you're out of the United States, you can get it on Amazon, but you can also get it, why aren't you working? Come on, you. You can also get it at Powell's Book in Oregon, but it's a coffee table picture book. that we're really proud of. So we do projects like that together. Books. We also have an ebook that you can download that is about, it's a sort of a reverse location guide. So rather than here's the location, when's the good time to go, it's the other way around. You have some time to go photograph, where's good to go? Where's a good place? So that's that one. No, this is not, it doesn't want to let go of PowerPoint.
You're not, no, you can close down the PowerPoint. You can try.
Yeah, maybe I'll quit PowerPoint. It'll release its lock on that. Let's see. Try one more time. Nope, it's just showing this blue screen.
Let me try. Let me open up photo cascade.
Yeah, maybe.
Up, Erin.
Yes, if you go to our front page at the bottom, there's a thing get the books, and you should be able to see it there. But for whatever reason, I can't get it to share. But Oregon, My Oregon is the name of the new book. So we do things like that. We sometimes bring each other in on our workshops.
You want me to let me try and share this screen. Let me see.
Okay.
No, what is it? What's happening? This. Yeah. Just a minute.
Yeah, so there's our website. And then scroll down to the bottom there and you'll see get the books on the right. You should see a little, yeah. Oregon, get the books right there on the right, in the far right. Right above your images.
Just a minute, let me, yeah. So get the books. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. So those are our two books. If you go in there and then you can click on either one of them, but there's Photographing Through the Seasons and Oregon, My Oregon. Those are both group collaborations. The most recent one is published by Timber Press, which is a very well-known nature book publisher. So we're quite proud of that, but we also run an educational blog. So on this same website, that's where I put out most of my articles. And we also have started a YouTube channel. So that's our video blog. So those are posted both to the blog and also on YouTube. So we do stuff like that. It's basically, we're a bunch of people who enjoy each other's company. We respect each other a lot. We have fun together, and it's a strength in numbers thing where when one of us does well, it helps the whole team, you know?
It's exploring light. That's what it is.
Yes. Yes. Very much so. So yeah, so it's Sean Bagshaw, David Cobb, Adrian Klein, Zach Schnepp, Kevin McNeil, Chip Phillips, and me. That's us. So they're like brothers to me. We're a great team, and we really genuinely enjoy each other's company. We talk all the time on our Slack channel just about things that have nothing to do with photography. We're very connected, and it's like a little family.
You conducted quite a few workshops with, I guess, Ted Gore as well.
Oh, that was years ago. Yeah, I brought him in to assist me as a co-leader on some Dolomites workshops. Right. And I have a whole bunch of people that I brought in like that. I work with Enrico Fossati, Alexander Deschaumes, a bunch of the Photo Cascadia guys, Michael Shaneblum. I like bringing my friends in and sharing.
All right.
There we are.
So, Erin, quickly, Subhadeep was asking one more question.
Yeah.
I think it was around 2 years back when you released the lexicon, the taxonomy of post-processing workflows, right? I think it was
3 years, yeah.
Was it? Yeah, 3 years back. Okay.
Something like that, yeah.
So his question was, is a new one coming up anytime soon?
Is there a new one?
Yeah, my question is, has there anything new been done since then to even update?
That I would add to the lexicon?
Yeah.
You mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I could expand it a lot. I think still those are kind of the core techniques of landscape photographers. But I'm always coming up with stuff that I teach in my workshops. I guess I should give them some fancy names and then put them in the lexicon. Some of them have names, like my nip and tuck technique, stuff like that. But yeah, that's what's so cool about landscape photography. It's actually a very progressive genre, and a lot is going on these days. There's a lot of cool innovation. It's really an exciting time to be a landscape photographer.
That's, yeah, absolutely. There's no two doubts about it. Guys, anybody else has any question? Anything?
I have one small question. Like, Erin, why not other colors like red, yellow, or green? Why just purple? What fascinated you?
Yeah, it started out as a mountaineering thing. So in the 1980s, the kind of like the legit mountaineering colors were red, yellow, blue. They still are, because they're very easily seen out in nature if you need to be rescued. And purple. Back in the 80s, purple was like a total mountaineering color. You could actually get, full on like park. Oh, I just lost my. Hang on. Just a minute. I knew I was going to lose that camera. We went just a little too far there.
Yeah, and one of the Facebook stories, he was, somebody questioned that is it the purple jacket, and Erin said no, it is not the purple jacket, because she has quite a few purple jackets, and there's only one the purple jacket, which is the oldest one.
There was a purple jacket. There we go, back in business.
And purple vase as well.
It burned in the fire, unfortunately. So yeah, the purple jacket is no more the purple jacket, but that's where it started. Yeah. But then it became like a lucky color for me, I guess. I just sort of liked wearing purple, and I started wearing it even when I wasn't out in the mountains. And then it kind of became like people would get on me if they saw a picture of me and I wasn't wearing purple, I would get in trouble. So I was kind of like, okay, I'll wear purple. Became like a branding thing, So, and it's just kind of fun. Now I really enjoy the challenge of finding purple things. So, and it's fun to see people showing up in purple shirts and people give me purple things, and it's just fun.
Something funny happened. So I was talking to you and Gary, last week, last week, I think, about the schedules and all, right? So by mistake, I was kind of writing both of, at the same time, basically. And somehow I mistakenly typed a purple jacket in Gary's window. And Gary said, what? I don't have any purple jacket. Who are you talking about? I said, oh, that was Erin. My bad. I said, I was just running out and was about to grab a purple jacket just for the session. I said, no, that's not required.
I've had some funniest stories. A woman told me once that she was wearing a purple jacket and she was out shooting a river somewhere in Idaho or something. And these two guys with huge lenses on their cameras came up to her and they're like, Erin, I've always wanted to meet you. Hi, I'm so-and-so. She was like, no, I'm not Erin. And they were offended. They thought that she was really me and that I was just putting them off. And it was like trying to pretend not to be me. And so she was with her daughter apparently, and she had to pull out her business card, and her daughter did, and said, this is my mom. She's not whoever you think. She's not that person. It's funny. Poor Gary.
Yeah. So what is your favorite location in US apart from Dolomites? I know that you shoot a lot around Death Valley and then US Southwest in general. But what is your most favorite location in US? Is it Oregon or Death Valley, or what do you say?
What is my favorite outside of those? That's a good question. I think probably the Redwoods and maybe actually Olympic National Park are a couple of places I don't know, the French Alps. I spent a ton of time there doing workshops in the French Alps. That's also... That's awesome.
I was thinking like inside US. Okay. So inside US, it's...
but in the US, probably those areas. I love the rainforest. I actually have some shots that I really love that I need to get processed from up in Olympic. And I've done some redwoods workshops, and that's super fun. I love being the things about the rainforest and the big trees is they remind me of mountains, and that it's something that reminds you of just how tiny you are in the earth, you know, and that's that humbling feeling of being next to this majestic creature that's, you know, so big and so old. And I love that. So it's the same, it's similar to the mountains.
Backyard. It's literally
What's
backyard,
that?
right? Redwood, it's literally a backyard. You can just drive probably 2 hours any day and then just get some shots.
Yeah, I mean, it's from here, it's more like probably 10 hours where I am right now, but yeah, but it's pretty close. I actually, it's, you know, because I have offices in Europe and in the United States. It's actually like what I feel is in my backyard is the Dolomites, because I can be at the edges of the Dolomites in about a 3-hour drive from where my office is there. So it's funny. I feel like I have different backyards, multiple backyards.
Okay. My last question would be that you do a lot of workshops and all. So, and they're very unique in terms of, because you are not taking them to any touristy kind of locations. So what kind of hard work that goes into preparing those for all those workshops, and how much time do you take to prepare for all those things, and what effort goes into?
It's incredibly time consuming. Yeah. So I have spent so much of time of my landscape photographer life exploring these areas, trying to figure that out. When I first started, like the Dolomites, for example, when I first started going there, it wasn't because I thought I was going to teach workshops. I was just running around, running amok, having fun. But when it occurred to me that it might be fun to do workshops there, I was told that it couldn't be done the way that I was thinking, because back then there were some people who were doing like 1 or 2 Italians mostly, and some people from Austria, and would do like 1 or 2 days, because you could go in and get out the next day from a hut, and people would bring their cars, and you know, it was not the American style all-inclusive transportation, meals, everything. And what I wanted to do was take people on a sort of a cross section of the Dolomites, multi-massif, move them around, hike them way out there. I had all these grand ideas and no idea of how to pull it off. And I was told that it couldn't be done. And so I figured it out, how to do it and how to make it work and how to make it so that most people could do it. That's the other hard thing. You know, a lot of people can't hike very far. So where could I take people that they don't have to hike that far and your average person can do it? Very, very time consuming to figure that out. And then you got to like get to know the hotels and go visit the hotels and get to know the transportation companies and make sure that they're all up to snuff and make sure everything's super high quality and that the people who need whatever types of food can get those types of food. And yeah, so it's that is actually the logistics and the planning of the workshops is what consumes a lot of my time. And that's the kind of stuff that I don't actually enjoy. So I got an assistant in early 2018, I think it was, Jessica. And so and I also have another assistant, Anna in Italy, who does specifically Italian stuff for me. But so Jessica and Anna have helped a lot so that I can do less of that. Like, just, you know, like once I figure it out, like I still have to figure it out, but those two, they can just make it happen. I'd be like, here's my dream itinerary, go reserve the stuff and, you know, send the participants their, you know, forms of telling me when they arrive for airport arrival. And, you know, I don't want to do that stuff. So definitely on the business end of things, that's something that's hard for most people to do, is let go, but it helps.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful. So many things. Anything else, Atanu? Or
no. I'm good. Thanks.
Can't. They are corrected?
Yeah, Atanu just mentioned that he's good.
Yeah, I'm good as well. Thank you.
I think it was quite a wonderful session. Everybody has been liking that on YouTube as well, and fabulous one. It's wonderful to see the way you have really your photography journey and adventurous part and that purple part, and so it's been really awe-inspiring for all of us. And thank you for accepting the invite. Thank you for enlightening us for these couple of hours, just 2 hours to be precise. And I think you enjoyed as well. So
absolutely, you guys are so enthusiastic. I love that. And I'm pretty sure I've seen a bunch of your photos on Facebook, and you guys are really good photographers too. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, thank you. So I think everybody thumbs up so that I can take the screenshot.
So routine.
Thumbs up and smile, wonderful smile. Yeah, yeah. That's it. That's wonderful. So thank you, Erin, again, and thank you all the panelists. Thank you, Som, Himadri, Prakash, Atanu, especially for bringing us in touch with Erin as well, and Sandeep. And thank you everyone on YouTube as well for sticking by for so long. It's almost 10:30 in India at night. So yeah.
Best wishes for the journey ahead, Erin.
Yeah, best wishes, Erin.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good night.
Thanks very much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.